Urban exploring isn't always the only way to come across something unexplainable. At any moment, reality can come crashing down and have you questioning everything around you. Whether you're exploring an abandoned property, going to a haunted graveyard, or just staying in a motel for a night, the worst can happen at any moment. In today's video, we will be going over 6 stories. The first 4 are true. The last 2 are written works of fiction. I know how much you guys like a mix of both, so let me know in the comments section how you feel about it. I know me outright saying it in the intro ruins the illusion, and me talking about the illusion ruins it even farther. But if there's going to be a mix, I feel it needs to be said. Regardless, I hope you all enjoy the video. Also, the first story is a true story of mine, so I hope you all enjoy it. The rest of the writers can be found in the description. Huge thank you to all of them for sharing their stories with me so I can share them with you. Remember, you can send in your own stories to rylhstories@gmail.com if you'd like to have them featured in a video. Please drop a like and comment, and consider subscribing if you're new, as I make videos like this all the time. Enjoy the stories, and as always, have a great night. This is a true story that happened to my friends and I a couple years ago. A story that I wish I would have recorded, because the events that took place probably would have gone viral on my maybe 2,000 sub channel at the time. I live in Minnesota, a small and quiet area. My friends and I decided it would be fun to explore an abandoned school one summer night in June. The school was about 40 miles from our small little country town. The school itself had been abandoned for about 30 years, and rested in the middle of a tiny town with a population of about 200 people. However, the school was used for neighboring towns as well, so it had 2 stories and a full basement. It was, well, is, massive. People would always talk about scary things that happened there, and we grew tired of hearing stories and wanted to see for ourselves. We made a plan to meet up at 2 a.m. and drive over there in 2 separate cars. I can't be asked to make up names for all of my friends, but since it isn't really vital to the story, I'll just say it was me, my brother, his girlfriend, and 4 of our friends. Upon arriving, we were worried about being able to get in. It sat right in the middle of this small town, and we knew that someone was bound to call us in if they saw us. We parked a couple blocks away and made it over as stealthily as we could. Honestly, I'd say we did a pretty good job. No one said a word the whole way. Getting in was extremely easy. Someone, probably with the same idea as us, but with clearly more planning, had cut the chain holding the 2 main swinging doors shut in the front. Getting in was as simple as just walking in. Once inside, we got more than we were expecting. The school was extremely run down, and about as creepy could get. Graffiti littered the walls, and ceiling tiles littered the floors. Awesome, a whole school to explore. We walked down the main hallway, admiring the beaten up lockers, random bicycles. Yes, bicycles. Until we came to a large room off to the side. My friend who was leading the pack looked surprised as he shined his flashlight into it. So, of course, everyone wanted to know what caused the expression. This is where things began to get a little freaky. Inside the room there were articles of clothing, a case of water only about halfway gone, a small twin-sized mattress, a toothbrush, and some other miscellaneous items. It was very clear that someone had been staying here. I know that may not sound strange for some of you city dwellers, but for a small town, especially one that takes gravel roads to get to, this was bizarre. We had no idea if this man was still around or not, which is what is going to make this next part sound, well, extremely stupid. After exploring farther, we found the door to the basement. Everyone was too terrified to go in, but my curious self couldn't let it go unexplored. Yes, again, in hindsight, I know how dumb this is given what we came across earlier. But I had a bright LED flashlight, a pocket knife, and a personality that just doesn't care. My friends know I can handle myself well enough, so I told them I wanted to go down there and they could scope out the second story. Everyone seemed okay with the idea, so I propped the door open with a brick and walked down the concrete steps. The basement wasn't as creepy as you would expect. It was about as furnished as the main floor had been, but maybe a little bit less beaten up. I came across a door that said gaming room and just had to check it out. Inside I found some old arcade games that were pretty destroyed. Pac-Man, Space Invaders, and a few others I don't remember. Looks to me like everyone else is missing out on some cool shit. After exploring different drawers and whatnot, I went back into the hallway and continued my adventure. Most of what I found were recreational rooms I couldn't really tell the purpose of. After about 70 or 80 yards, I came to the end, and what I saw had me, again, very curious. There was a rectangular hole on the top half of the wall, carving out a crawl space with pipes and wires running through it. It looked to be about 20 feet by 20 feet. As I get up on my toes to shine the flashlight around the corner of it, I felt what I can only explain as a cool breeze. What happened next is why I am telling you this story. As I shined my flashlight around the corner, I heard the blood-curdling scream of a female, followed by what sounded like firecrackers going off. I had no idea what was going on. I don't think I've ever reacted to anything as fast as I did in that moment. I turned around and sprinted for the stairs, not knowing where the source of the sound came from. It definitely sounded to be from the basement, but I just couldn't tell. As I near the steps, I hear all of my friends yelling for me. When I reached the first step, I could swear I felt something grab at my ankle, but in all honesty, it was probably just my imagination. However, with how this story pans out, it has me second guessing. I fly up the stairs almost like they don't even exist, taking 3 or 4 steps a jump. When I get to the top, I see everyone running towards me, asking what happened. Of course, I'm asking them what happened. They thought I was messing with them. I thought they were messing with me. We all heard the same thing. Apparently they had just finished exploring the second floor, as I was finishing exploring the basement. We had already explored the whole first floor together, leaving no area unsearched, which means no one else was here with us. So if I didn't make the noise, and they didn't make the noise, who did? We decided it best to call it quits with that. But this is not where the story ends. As we walked to the front door, we could hear muffled sounds of things moving, footsteps that didn't sound like they were coming from us, etc. These things can be passed off as it being an old building with a bad echo. But what happened next is what has me questioning everything from that night. When we got to the front door, we were met by a police officer. He looked annoyed with us, but told us all to stand up against the wall next to the door. We did as he asked with no protest. He told us that what we did was extremely stupid. After telling us we weren't in any trouble so long as we don't do it again, he told us some things that makes us not want to go anyways. Well, kind of, if you catch my drift. He told us that he didn't come in to find us because he's terrified of the place. Upon asking him why, he had this to share with us. After patrolling this town for 10 years, I know everything there is to know about that building. I've seen people go in and come out screaming more times than I could ever write trespassing tickets for. Hell, just a couple weeks ago. He now began to speak with us in a very friendly manner. I saw a homeless man come running out butt naked in the middle of the night. This is where I remembered the room that someone had clearly been camping out in. After catching the guy and asking him what the hell he was doing, he told me he had been homeless for years and decided to camp out in there for a few nights. I know the question a few of you are probably asking right now. How did he get a mattress? Apparently there was a storage room that we somehow missed. Why it had mattresses in it, I really don't know. He continued speaking to us. The man woke up in the middle of the night to a young girl around the age of 10 staring at him from a few feet away. The man jumped up and the girl began to scream for him to get out. So he did, butt naked and all. Considering we were all already caught, I decided to tell him our story. The officer was intrigued by it, but not surprised, because apparently some 20 years ago, a woman in her mid-40s had hung herself in the gymnasium, and legend has it she still haunts the property, both as an adult and as a child. Well, that's my story. We shook hands with the officer, who then followed us back to our vehicles, drove home, and talked about it for hours. My only question is, what happens if you don't take her warning? I'm not sure, but I'm not going to be the one to find out. This event predates the previous experience Matt and I had, but it set the path for our curiosity with the paranormal. Matt still lived a few blocks away from me at this point. I was 15 and he was 16, and since I didn't yet have my license, I'd walk the railroad tracks to his house every weekend. We were your typical teenage tough guys. We showed no fear of anything, on the outside at least. It was summer break in between freshman and sophomore year in high school. We had spent the afternoon and evening tossing the football, and as night fell, we started telling ghost stories. Matt's dad joined in on the storytelling with us. He was always trying to one-up us and play cool, but I could always tell his stories were rubbish. Until that night. Around 10:30 p.m. that night, Matt's dad said, "I know a really haunted place I can take you guys. You wanna go?" We looked at each other for a second before Matt beat me in a calling shotgun. We piled into his dad's Honda Civic and headed down a country road between Manchester and Tullahoma, Tennessee. Seems like we drove for an hour or so with nothing but spare streetlights and dark woods on both sides of the vehicle. Suddenly Matt's dad turned right onto a dirt road, leading into the woods. I only recognized the area because 4 students from our school died out there a year or so prior. Other trails led off the main path every mile or so. I experienced something at the end of one of the trails years later, but that'll be another story. The area we were approaching was called Fire Lake. The lake was at one point a popular camping site, but was also an area where some of the settlers of yesteryear set up shop. They also, of course, eventually died there. As the lake came into sight, Matt's dad took the last path to the left. About a mile down the path, we pulled up on an extremely old graveyard. "Well, this is it, boys," Matt's dad said as he shut the car off. We just kind of looked at each other like, what do we do now? Matt's dad jumped out and started to round the gravel circle between the graveyard and the pitch black. We turned on the headlights, so we could at least see where we were walking, since it was now 1 a.m. Matt jumped out with a hustle like I'd never seen. I was a bit heavier, so I was the slower moving one. The graveyard was at least a mile around, and a half-mile wide. As we neared the halfway point out of my peripheral vision, I saw a black form taking shape behind me. As it was forming, it was matching our walking pace, as if it were stalking us. As it clicked in my head what this was, my fear went to 100% and I shouted, "Run!" Matt and his dad only looked back a split second to witness this thing following us. The stalk turned into a chase as we cut through the middle of the graveyard. I apologize as I stepped over every grave. I could feel this shadow person or thing breathing down my neck. I felt it swiping at my shirt tail and gaining energy. Then it grabbed my legs and I fell forward with a thud. It pulled me by the ankles, back towards the center of the graveyard. It spoke loudly, but in a whisper like static, as if 20 people were all speaking at once. I dug into the ground, but didn't have near as much strength as the shadow person had. All of a sudden, Matt grabbed one of my arms, and his dad grabbed the other. With a heavy tug, they pulled me loose of its grip. I lost my boots in the fight. We ran with everything we had, and I did a slide that would make Luke Duke proud. Across the hood of the car. We didn't feel safe until we were back on asphalt. I still have to look over my shoulder every now and then. Hi, my name is Jayla. I watch your videos almost every day. Horror stories really excite me for some reason. I don't know why. Anyways, I would just like to share my story that happened almost 5 or 6 years ago. My house is over 80 years old, and the previous owner died here. I'm only 16 and live with my grandparents. Nothing bad has happened since this event. In my kitchen there contains about 5 cabinets against the wall. So one day I was in my room thinking about what I wanted to eat for dinner since it was 8, and I had barely eaten anything all day. I went to the kitchen and made myself some noodles. I put them in a bowl and searched through the cabinets for my favorite seasoning, lemon pepper. I closed the cabinets every time. I placed the noodles in the microwave for about 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, I took them out and went to my room. I stayed in my room for about 30 minutes before becoming thirsty. So I went to the kitchen and what I saw made me really uneasy. All 5 cabinets were open. I said to myself, that's odd. I only opened one cabinet and I closed it right after I was done. I grew kind of paranoid at this point. I brushed it off and closed the cabinets. As I was walking back to my room, a big black spoon fell on the floor. At this point, I was petrified. I hesitantly went to pick it up and placed it back in the utensils compartment, and it happened again. Cabinets all opened at once. I sat there for about 20 minutes frozen, eyes open wide. I never told my grandparents in the hope of not causing them any fright. Something wasn't right. Somebody was playing a trick on me. Or maybe something. This event happened to me a couple months ago. It's more suspenseful than scary, because I never saw anything, I just heard things. A couple months ago I went to do some night fishing close to the Rosie, at the Riveteer Museum. There's an old broken down pier next to the little beach right by the parking lot and streets. And the main pier is about 0.3 miles down the trail. Usually in the day I fish at this little broken pier, so I figured it would be the same at night. Under this broken pier is broken pillings, and rocks, some trash, and whatever else washes up. It's big enough to walk under if you're under 5'11", so I have to bend down some. Anyway, the building next to the pier has 24-hour security for the last couple years, so even though I'm a girl, I wasn't afraid to be out there alone, and I usually just fish alone anyways. There's usually other people fishing around, but I've never had a problem, and they have treated me nicely. So I put my rod down. I have it all set up already. So all I have to do is put bait or a lure on. I'm about to set up a camera, and I hear this weird sound like a rumble. I look out at the water thinking it might be a boat in the distance, but see nothing. Then I look behind me. It could be a security guard in the truck. But I was wrong. I go back to what I'm doing, and I hear it again a little louder and stronger. Like I feel it through my body. I look around again, trying to rule out every possibility, but in the middle of thinking I hear it very loud again, and it rumbles the whole pier. I don't know why, but I stomp the ground of the pier, hoping that if it's an animal or a homeless person fucking with me, they might run out. But no, it growls even louder and more intense. I'm studying to be a veterinarian, working with large wild animals, and I have a lot of experience identifying particular animal calls and sounds. In about a millisecond, I go over every animal call and sound that I know. I only came to 2 conclusions. It was either a huge-ass sea lion, because I've seen some in the area, or it was something not of this world. I don't scare easily. And within those seconds of me thinking about what it could be, I grabbed all my stuff and started walking to the main pier, while saying out loud to myself a few times, "Fuck that." I was conflicted, though I was also telling myself to go back and film it, but when I called my other half to ask him about it, he said no. What if it is something you can't defend yourself against? I'll never know, but I do know I'll never forget that sound. It was the scariest thing I ever heard in my life. I'll forever be trying to match that sound to something. I got to the main pier and there were a few fishermen on it, and I told them while kinda laughing it off, but they didn't go over there to find out what it was. I stayed for a couple hours, caught some fish, and released, then left not even looking at the broken pier as I walked to my car. I've only told 2 close friends about it, who are familiar with animal calls and sounds, and even they were stumped. When I was younger, my family used to travel a lot. I got to see most of the US, and many other countries. From most trips, I hold cherished and memorable experiences that I will never forget. However, one trip still plagues my mind and haunts my nightmares. As per usual with most of our trips, I was spontaneously woken up at around 1 in the morning, given a single suitcase with a leaving in 1 hour warning. A good few hours into the car ride I read, "Welcome to Michigan," and something about lakes. But it doesn't really matter. After what didn't feel like much longer, we were driving through a thick forest. It didn't even seem like we were on a road anymore. A few minutes pass and we pull up to an old, but well-kept, large wooden lodge. The sign out front read, La Casa Grande, which made me chuckle a little. But the name was certainly correct. The place was massive and radiated a light orange glow from the setting sun. It was quite a beautiful place, but as soon as we pulled in, we were already walking in and getting our rooms figured out. As my parents dealt with the concierge, I began to wander and look around the grand hall we were in. A grand chandelier made of wrought iron, and horns lit the high ceiling, as the grand hearth gave a gentle glow to the floor, illuminating the face of a giant bear rug. I saw that the second story is where the rooms were, all along the balcony overlooking the grand hall. There were, I'd say, about 10 rooms above, most of which, men of various ethnicities, began rapidly pouring out of them armed, and appearing to be preparing for some sort of hunt. As the men walked down the stairs and out the front door, I hear an old man's voice from behind me whisper. I tried to warn them. They're looking for what they should not hope to find. His first words made me jump a little, turning around to see an old, maybe 70s Native American man. I quickly asked what they were hunting for, to which he had me come close, and I could feel his breath as he said, "They are looking for the skinwalker that killed their dogs outside. However, they believe it to be some sort of great wolf. May the gods watch over them." I looked puzzled after hearing the word skinwalker, and asked what it was. He immediately hushed me upon starting the word, and said, "Do not say their name, nor think of their existence. Only then will they know of you." Later that night I was sitting in my room, my parents a single door down the hall. I couldn't get the skin monster out of my head. I began Googling it on my smartphone, watching YouTube videos about it. Just about everything about that would classify as thinking about it. Eventually I fell asleep, after scaring myself into slumber. Later in the night I was woken up by a cold wind, wisping into my room, creating a whistling noise. I noticed my window was open, and so I got up to close it. As I approached, I noticed 4 large, roughly 2-inch deep claw marks into the wooden windowsill. My heart completely sunk into my stomach and I froze. I stood there for a few minutes, and as the wind died down, I could hear a breathing from just outside my window. A deep, growling breath. The only way to describe it is it sounded painful, and angry, agitated. I could hear myself shaking the floorboards beneath my feet in fear. I reached a single hand out to close the window, with hopes that whatever was here had left. But when my arm was a few inches from the window, I noticed a large, black claw, oozing a glistening black, tar-like liquid reach around, one after the other. Within a few seconds, the marks in the windowsill were again filled. I turned and ran for the door, hearing a loud screech behind me followed by a heavy movement trying to force itself through the window. I slammed the door behind me and pushed a small table to block the door. Upon turning around, I noticed the old Native American man sitting in the same chair in the grand hall as before. I called down to him, crying and pleading for help. No one else even slightly concerned by any of the commotion. I stared at the man who was facing the fireplace. I noticed, however, a large sadistic grin stretching across his wrinkly face. His head alone started to turn up towards me. The same expression as before. I again felt extremely cold, with the hair on the back of my neck standing up. I hear an ear-piercing bell as the grandfather clock dings the midnight bell. It caused my ears to ring as I dropped to the floor, covering them. I looked down to the old man, who was now gone, and the fire was out as well. My vision faded to darkness. I awoke to yelling and spotlights. I look around and I'm in the woods. I began noticing familiar faces, who have not a clue of who I am. I noticed one man had on a digital watch, and inquired the date and time. It is the same date, but he showed me the time. It was still midnight. I explained my story to the men, and they looked confused. Appropriate for the given circumstances. Only now I notice, however, a searing pain in my back. A few of the men help me to my feet as they inspect my back. They told me I had a 4-claw, 2-inch deep laceration, oozing a black tar-like liquid. I became faint, and as they rushed to grab a hold of me, I subsided back into unconsciousness. Now in my bed, back home awaking to my mother gently shaking me, with a plate of breakfast on my desk. I asked my mom about the trip, explaining what I knew as quickly as I could. All she said to me was, "You always had quite imaginative dreams." I began to shrug off the whole encounter, disregarding my lack of prior knowledge on the creature, and upon a Google search, the lodge does exist. But I figured it was just circumstantial, and I made my way back to my desk. I sit down, and right before beginning to eat, I noticed the bottom of the plate was oozing the same black tar-like liquid. I call out for my mom, as the hair on my neck stands up again. I look to my doorway and my mom just stood there, grinning. This is going to be as quick as I can make it without leaving anything essential out. I'm not writing this to tell you a story. I'm writing this to get the information onto the web. There aren't that many of the older televisions out there anymore, but this information still has to be made public. I wish I could use a more widely viewed source than Reddit, but I need plausible deniability. As far as the people who could do something about this are concerned, it's just another story. But I promise you, this isn't fiction. I'm going to say it again. This is very real, and something needs to be done. Everyone has to pitch in to stop the worst from happening. What you can do is very simple. Destroy every analog television that you can find. You know, the old ones with the dials on the front to adjust the signal. They need to go. All of them. I'm going to tell you why, so that maybe you'll take this seriously. I don't have the time, money, or resources to travel around the world, smashing old TVs 24/7. I need everyone's help. I'm in the military and I travel around the country a lot. That's how I figured this out. You can check my post history. I'm not lying to you. Usually when they're sending us from one duty station to another, they take care of us along the way. They pay to put us up at hotels every night so that we don't try to drive it all in one go and get ourselves killed. But because Uncle Sam is cheap, we don't get to stay anywhere ritzy, just highway motels for your average soldier. I was in one of these motels when I came across the first analog TV I'd seen since I was a little kid. I couldn't believe they still had something that outdated in their room. I guess when you're only paying $35 a night, you get what you pay for. It was already pretty late, but I'd been driving for hours and felt restless, so I figured I'd watch a little TV before I headed off to sleep. Getting the thing to work proved to be a challenge. It didn't have a remote, just the 2 dials on the right side of the monitor. I had to fiddle with it to find each channel. That's what happens when you mix analog tech with a digital signal. Lots of wiggle room between the stations. I was quickly finding out that getting the damn thing to stick on a channel was all but impossible. It took me 10 minutes of fiddling before I could get a clear picture. I found an episode of Arrow that was halfway through, and watched that. Once it was over, some other show started that I had no desire to watch. I groaned and started to try to find another channel. Shifting the knob between stations resulted in nothing but static, with maybe a whisper of clear picture here and there. I was about to give it up and head to bed when something a bit odd happened. As I was turning the knob to find a channel, the static just froze. Those black and white dots that are always moving in TV static were frozen in place. I sat back and looked at it for a minute, wondering what was going on. I laughed to myself at how old this TV was as I tapped on the bowed glass, thinking that maybe it would unskip like an old record player. Instead, some of the white dots moved away from my finger. I blinked and looked again. Nope, I wasn't seeing things. That definitely just happened. I did it again, harder. Somewhere else on the screen. Same thing, only this time more white dots moved away than last time. I started to get curious. I took my whole hand and dragged it across the screen. A swath of white vanished in its wake. I kept on like this until the entire screen was black. I don't really know why. It was almost hypnotic, like popping bubble wrap. When the entire screen was nothing but black, I tapped it one more time. And this is when the crazy thing happened. My finger went in the screen. I don't mean it broke the glass. It went into the television, like the girl from The Ring. I pulled my finger back out and just stared at the TV, half expecting a monster to come out and try to kill me. But nothing happened. The TV just sat there, blacker than anything I'd ever seen. I got curious again. I tried my whole hand. It went in with no problems. I wondered what was behind the screen. So I tried putting my phone inside to take a picture, but it wouldn't pass the glass. I tried my hand again, without the phone. No problems. After a few minutes of testing, I realized that only organic things would go through. My hand, my foot, and the fruit in my room all phased through, but not my tech, or my shoes. I was coming to terms with what I had to do if I wanted to look inside. My curiosity got the better of me, and after a deep breath, I stuck my head through. I couldn't see anything at first. It was so dark. After a few minutes, my eyes started to distinguish between different shades of black, but just barely. It was a featureless expanse as far as I could detect. Nothing but black and more black. I tried to listen and see if I could hear anything. It was so quiet I could hear my heartbeats. At least my head was still connected to my body. I was just about to pull myself back out when I heard a sound besides my own blood pumping. I couldn't place it at first. It was too far away. But after a minute or so, the sound became more distinct. It was footsteps. Someone was running and getting closer. I thought of two things at once. Either this was some poor soul who had gotten trapped in here by being stupid enough to dive in, or I was about to meet the monster in the TV. I waited until I could get some kind of visual, hoping I would be able to figure out which of my thoughts was true before I left. The footfalls were closer now. Close enough sounding that I should have been able to see something running, but I didn't. I only heard a new sound. I heard someone screaming. They screamed without stopping for what must have been 2 minutes. The screaming and the footsteps got louder and louder, but I still couldn't see anything. I made my choice. Nothing human screamed for that long without pausing for breath. I yanked my head out of the TV, but something was wrong. The screaming hadn't stopped. It was coming out of the speakers, and the running was getting closer. Abruptly, the running stopped, but the screams stayed constant. I heard a banging noise, and the TV shook. This is where I started to get really scared. The screaming continued, and the TV kept shaking, like someone was trying to break down a door. I turned it off, but nothing changed. I unplugged it. Still nothing. The banging was getting faster, the TV shaking more violently. The screaming still hadn't stopped. Finally, I took the lamp from my nightstand and threw it into the screen, shattering the glass and breaking the TV. The screaming stopped. I didn't sleep that night. I went down to my car and got my pistol. I sat in front of the broken TV until the sun came up, worried I'd set the thing free instead of keeping it in. Luckily for me, there was no sign of anything otherworldly. I told the motel manager I had gotten drunk and smashed the TV, paid the bill, and left. I was still too shaken to really process what had just happened. But as I drove the rest of the way to my next duty station, I realized the gravity of what I had just been through. It happened to me. It could happen to someone else. I don't know what that thing was, but my gut tells me we can't ever let it get into our world. please, if you're reading this, you have to help me out. Find every single one of those old TVs you can, and destroy them. I'm pretty sure the analog design lets them find the blank spaces between the digital signals, where this thing lives. We have to close the door once and for all. Together, we can do it. Together, we can be safe.